Aloha, good afternoon. It is 2:48 p.m. on Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023, and I call the Committee on Housing, Sustainability, and Health meeting to order. I welcome Vice Chair Kia Aina and Council Members Dos Santos Tam, Okimoro, and Toba. Pursuant to Hawaii Vice Statute Section 92-3.7, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony remotely or in person in the council chamber on all items on the agenda when each item is taken up. All persons who register to testify in person will be called upon first, followed by those who have registered to testify remotely. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to testify following the registered testifiers. For those standing by remotely, please utilize the Zoom raise hand feature to indicate your desire to speak. For those joining us by telephone only, please press star 9 to indicate your desire to speak. I'll identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called again, press star 6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and will be limited to a 1-minute presentation on each item. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at a remote meeting to be conducted by roll call unless unanimous. I will first call for objections, and if there are any, I'll call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside the council chamber, under HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we establish contact. I don't see anyone online now. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones, and we'll go to agenda item number 1. Also welcome Council Chair Waters to the chamber. Agenda item number 1 for action, Bill 46, 2023, defines and prohibits the sale of flavored tobacco products within the city and county of Honolulu. Members, we have a hand-carried proposed CD1, OCS 2023-0773, August 23rd, 2023, 9:59 a.m. version of the bill submitted by myself. The hand-carried CD1 makes the following amendments. In Section 2 of the bill, Section 41-.1, the definition sections, it amends the definition of flavored tobacco product to incorporate language from the definition of characterizing flavor and removes the definition of characterizing flavor. In the definitions of electronic smoking device and tobacco product, it replaces the word substance with e-liquid when referring to aerosolized or vaporized substances. Amends the definition of retailer to remove the inclusion of employees. In Section 2 of the bill, titled Prohibition, it amends the description of presumption of flavor, removes subsection 2 and renumbers the subsequent subsections, and adds a new subsection 4 regarding public statements or claims regarding cooling and effects. In Section 2, under the title Administrative Penalty, it adds language to specify that the retailer is responsible to pay for the violations. It makes additional technical and non-substantive amendments. I do know Dr. Ireland from the Department of Emergency Services is present. If you wanted to come up or have any comments on the bill, or at least maybe you could indicate the administration's position, and then I'd open it up if anyone has questions of the director. Aloha, Director.
Aloha. The administration stands in support. Thank you very much.
Mahalo for that. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Toba.
Thank you, Councilmember Wire. What is the history of this on the state level, on the state side? Is there a reason why the state doesn't put a similar ban in place? And I have several more questions, so.
I don't know the answer to that. I know that if the state didn't have something in place, the county would need something in place to prevent these products that potentially are dangerous to and marketed to our youth in place. But the exact plan of the state and what they're doing is, I'm not fully aware of that.
All right, do we know how many businesses will be affected by this ban?
I do not.
Okay. Do we know if there's other jurisdictions that have this type of ban in place, and who will be responsible for the enforcement of the ban.
And I don't have those information either,
Okay.
Councilmember. Thank you.
Okay.
Mahalo for that. Any other questions of Director? Okay, appreciate the questions from Councilmember Toba. And I do think a lot of that discussion will likely come up in the testimony, and look forward to talking about it. And if not, I'm sure administration will have the answers at the next meeting as well. Clerks, do we have in-person registered testifiers for this item? I have the list, so I'll just start with that, Madam Clerk. So we have up first Jill Tamashiro, followed by Joshua Ching. Is Jill Tamashiro present? Okay. Aloha, if you wanted to come up, push the on button, and then just identify your name, and then can proceed when you're ready.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Jill Tamashiro on behalf of the Hawaii State Department of Health. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. We stand on our written testimony, and I just want to add that there's a particular urgency for counties to act on this particular issue. It's the counties that really bear the burden of youth e-cigarette use right now for our high school youth. Those numbers are upwards of 20 to 30% in our counties. Also, if you break it down by race, we know like in Honolulu County alone, if it's more like 1 in 3 or 30% of Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander high school students use e-cigarettes. Additionally, the e-cigarette or tobacco industry moves rather quickly, and the products are evolving rapidly. In 2017, US retail sales data showed that only 5% of e-cigarette sales had the highest concentration of nicotine, and in 2022, that number is more like 80%. So kids are getting exposed to a lot of nicotine. Nicotine affects learning, memory, attention, and impulsivity. So we thank you for considering this measure, and thank you for the opportunity.
Mahalo. If I may ask a quick question, and then I'll ask if any of my colleagues have questions. Do you have any insight or any comment on just the process as it's gone over at the state side? Because I know it's been an ongoing conversation. What is the status of, any bans or regulations in terms of tobacco products and flavors that you're aware of?
On the state level, so we know that these efforts have been attempted at the state level for about 9 years, but we're not able to pass successfully. So yeah, we look to the counties to act more urgently.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Councilmember Toba.
So I'll ask the same question that I asked.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry to put you on the
same. I just, is there other jurisdictions that have this type of ban in place, or cities?
Yes, across the country, yes. There are other jurisdictions, cities, and a few states, California, Massachusetts, even some really big cities, LA, just to name a few.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next, Joshua Ching, followed by Don Weissman, followed by Peggy Mirzra, and then Tina Yamaki. So go ahead, Joshua, whenever you're ready. Do you want to announce your name as well?
Aloha kako. This is Joshua Ching on behalf of the Coalition for Tobacco-Free Hawaii's Youth Council, and we are in strong support of Bill 46. Hawaii is facing a youth vaping epidemic. Across the U.S., Hawaii high school and middle school students have disproportionately high use rates of e-cigarette products containing toxic chemicals like nicotine and formaldehyde. These products have long-term health impacts, significantly harming the developing brain, altering nerve cell functioning, and exposing users to acute nicotine poisoning. Without necessary policy action, over 21,000 Hawaii youth alive today will die from a tobacco-related illness if smoking rates don't change. Beyond numbers, countless youth from across Hawaii have chronicled their experiences with tobacco, where they're turning to these products for comfort when they have no support system to confide in, witnessing the toll it takes on their family and friends through generations of addiction, or struggling to overcome the painful withdrawals and cravings of addiction themselves. Central to the youth vaping epidemic is an industry with a troubling history in our island home. From exploiting Native Hawaiian labor on tobacco plantations to bastardizing the image of sexualized hula girls on cigarette advertisements, Big Tobacco has capitalized on Hawaii's unique culture and legacy of colonialism to turn a profit off the backs of the most vulnerable. Of these groups, youth have often been the most targeted in Hawaii and beyond. For many, commercial tobacco use has manifested into a coping mechanism, creating a temporary sense of relaxation to deal with struggles like anxiety, body dysmorphia, and even intergenerational trauma, increasing dependence on the device while preserving the underlying symptoms, making e-cigarettes a deadly tool for profit in a worsening crisis of youth mental health. Today, consistent with the countless stories of Hawaii youth fighting nicotine addiction or watching their friends and family do so, Big Tobacco is exploiting our people, our culture, and our vulnerabilities through the use of flavored tobacco products. Aloha Sun Juice, Lilikoi Lychee, Paso Guava Nectar, Luau Punch, Pog, and Pineapple Orange are just a few of the more than 15,500 e-cigarette flavors, often designed specifically to entice local palates lining store shelves. It comes as no surprise then that 81% of youth who have ever used tobacco started with a flavored product, and 97% of youth who vape currently use a flavored product. Menthol, in particular, one of the most popular flavors among Hawaii youth, uses added chemicals to create a cooling sensation that, coupled with its minty flavor, makes it easier to start vaping and harder to quit. The industry, which considers Hawaii a menthol state, has invested heavily in promoting these products across the islands, driving public health disparities in Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities, with 78% of smokers from those communities using menthol cigarettes. Flavors, then, are the pinnacle of Big Tobacco's modern design for Hawaii, creating devices that specifically market to and addict the communities whose systemic vulnerabilities are a direct consequence of the history of exploitation they participate in. The industry, however, won't go down without a fight, spending $26 million annually on marketing and hundreds of thousands on lobbying in Hawaii alone. The tobacco industry's relentless presence in daily life on the islands isn't an accident, it's intentional. It's the primary reason that the Honolulu City Council is presently prevented from regulating the sale of tobacco in this county, a consequence of a 2018 gut-and-replace law passed behind closed doors. Big Tobacco has not only attempted to assert control over our people, our culture, and our vulnerabilities, but has actively come into our home and dictated the duties and functions of our own government. Banning the sale of all flavored tobacco products at the county level would work to end this deadly cycle of addiction, manipulation, and exploitation. Despite the fact that the state preempts the county's authority in regulating tobacco sales, passage of Bill 46 would be an unwavering expression of defiance against the financial influence of the tobacco industry and a signal to state legislators that the people of Honolulu are ready to fight the youth vaping epidemic now. We strongly urge that Bill 46 be passed and referred to the appropriate committee. It's time to put profits over the people, people over the profits of Big Tobacco. It's time to protect our keiki. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Any questions for the testifier? Mahalo, Mr. Ching. Don Weissman, do you want to proceed?
Yes, I'm Don Weissman. I represent the American Heart Association, and Mr. Ching took all my words, but he did a very comprehensive job. I will just highlight, you've got my written testimony, I'll just highlight that early on when e-cigarettes came to the market, the industry made a strong point of saying that e-cigarettes are safer than cigarettes or tobacco products. The science has now caught up with them. From a cardiovascular standpoint, e-cigarettes are not safer, and in some ways may actually be more dangerous because of the levels of nicotine that they contain. They're designed to hook the next generation of profits for the tobacco industry. And that's why I also emphasize that this needs to be comprehensive. If you leave loopholes for any types of flavored products, the industry will be ready to take advantage of it. They've shown that in the over 360 other communities across the country where they've attempted that. So it needs to be comprehensive. All tobacco product flavors need to be eliminated to be effective. And so I'll also point out that the FDA has not been effective in addressing these issues. They've left loopholes like allowing menthol to remain in cigarette products. So that's why you still see people using regular cigarettes. So we need to do this at the local level where we can be effective at addressing this important issue to our community. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions of the testifier? I had a quick question. So looking at combustible cigarettes, it's my understanding that flavors were removed in 2009,
Except menthol.
except menthol. But generally,
That's a
flavors.
big exception.
Yeah. Do you know why that was? Why did the U.S. Congress take them out of cigarettes? I mean,
I was just gonna, somewhere in my pocket, I've got a $20 bill, which is the tip of the ocean. But the tobacco industry is one of the largest donors to politicians, and the higher up the level of legislative bodies you go, the more money they're investing to try to bottle things up, which is why in 2018, I've been doing this work for 34 years. Year after year after year, we had to fight off preemption attempts to try to take away power from the counties because the industry doesn't have the same grassroots level influence with their money that at this level as they do across the street, where they can put money in the pockets of a couple of key legislators and bottle things up. And so that's why they were able to do that. In the last year, before gut and replace was eliminated, they were able to stick it into a bill that couldn't be vetoed because they put the language into a bill to fund kidney dialysis centers, had nothing to do with tobacco. And as a result of that, if we had tried to veto the bill, we would have killed dialysis patients. So we had to back off and let it go through and now continue to fight to overturn that preemption and return the power to you guys where the community has a voice.
appreciate that insight. That's interesting. So you're saying the law that prevented counties from regulating tobacco was put into a bill that funded dialysis.
Kidney dialysis funding.
Wow, interesting.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you for your testimony. If, I think Don, or no, Peggy, yeah, if you wanted to come up and testify, and then Ms. Yamaki, if you wanted to come up right after, and you can just proceed after Ms. Mirzra, if I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, you did. Good afternoon, Peggy Mirzwa, Hawaii Public Health Institute. Thank you so much for considering the measure. You have our written testimony, and a lot of it reflects what the Department of Health has already stated. I do want to just point out that 80% of Hawaii youth who smoke start with flavors, so it is definitively targeted at kids. And also, just the question was asked before, 360 localities in the nation have, they don't sell flavored tobacco, and then there's 5 states that have also passed similar legislation. And some other things 79% of registered voters on Oahu want to see the end of flavored tobacco sales, and that's because they know it's a huge problem. Kids are being targeted. And I also want to just highlight that last year, or this year, I guess, at the legislature, most of the testifiers so far have been talking about comprehensive regulation. So taxation, permitting, and licensure has passed at the state legislature last year, or this year. And we're also still working on the preemption piece, and we do have some folks who are really interested. It moved pretty far last year, too. So that's it, if I have any questions.
I have a quick question. So based on your understanding of the bill, is it getting rid of all tobacco products or just those that are flavored?
Just flavored tobacco products, including menthol.
Okay.
All of those, yes.
So the regular nicotine vape.
The pack-a-day regular smoker.
The pack-a-day regular smoker.
They can still smoke their pack-a-day.
Okay.
Although I would love if they didn't, but yes, they would still be able to do that. And then just tobacco, e-cigarettes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate that clarification. Any questions, Councilmember Toba?
So how do we, thank you for your testimony. So how do we regulate it, and why hasn't the state, kind of took the lead on this?
That's a complicated question. But regulating is pretty easy in the sense that if they're selling flavors, they're selling flavors, and that can be called in. It almost works, I believe, like a ticket. And fines. And why hasn't the state moved this? I think Don alluded to there is a lot of political power and money in the tobacco industry. This is their job, to keep these products on the market. They make a lot of money doing so. So as long as they can push something off, as we saw in California, where the legislature passed a flavor ban, but then for another year the tobacco companies fought it, hooked more kids and made $100 million. And then they voted again in California. They put it out to the ballot initiative, and then the voters voted it down too. So it's about money and power.
So but you see the challenges, right? So you look at fireworks, which is illegal.
Yes.
Right? It's still finding way to people's hands. So what's the difference?
The difference, I think, that when something is in a retail setting,
Okay.
it is easy to see. Nobody's selling illegal fireworks at, Smith's Salon or whatever. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Okimoro.
Thank you, Chair. I had a follow-up question on that, and you mentioned that if the regulation of it, and if found there are tickets that are administered. My question, and this may not be for you, but because you brought it up, I wanted to know what your thoughts were. If you had any experience, like who's going to regulate this? There are the fines that are cited in the measure, but who actually will be out there to cite and administer the tickets or fine those who are found in not breaking this proposed bill?
Okay, so
And while you're thinking, I'll just throw out there that maybe we can put that on the radar for MDO if they're listening, if admin has thoughts when they're back at the next committee. Sorry to interject, but then I'll turn it back to the
So I will
testifier.
say that when Hawaii County passed Tobacco 21, now they were the fourth actually jurisdiction in the nation to pass, no sales of tobacco to anybody under the age of 21. Their police force helped to enforce it, but people had to report it. I mean, we all know every department is spread thin, and so you have to work together as a community to ensure that laws are being enforced appropriately.
So your thought process is that somebody will see it and then turn in a report that they saw this in a specific store or establishment
Yes.
to the police?
I mean,
Is that
that could be a way, right? Like, I think we can continue that conversation, and then the fines, I mean, just speaking, could also go to help support that program, right?
and this would be issued through some sort of ticket, the violation of it? Questions that maybe can be addressed, like you said, Chair, in the future, because I don't like, what worries me is when we put forth things that have good intentions, but we don't have a process or a method for it to actually go
And they're
through.
definitely, I wasn't part of the process with T21, so I don't want to go too far into that because I don't want to misspeak in front of all of you, but, I would be happy to get you information about that, how that was rolled out and handled, because it was a huge undertaking, because that's even harder to denote, oh, is that person under 21, is a store, yeah.
And I agree with you. In our previous neighborhood board meeting, Councilmember Wire and I had a constituent concern, and they brought up this concern, and I'm a parent, I saw it, I see it as my children are going to school, and they are exposed to it at a very young age. So I understand that this is very important, and we want to make sure that we're not having our kids access it, but I just had those questions, so thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair.
of course, yes, it's two-sided, right? There is the policy and procedure side, and then there's the family side of it, because I'll tell you right now, my son goes to Ka'alei Pulu, and one of my colleagues had to do a presentation there because the sixth graders were having e-cigarettes. So it is very much there. So I understand your feeling on that side too, but
Thank
good
you.
policy is important. Thank you.
Chair.
Great questions. See no questions for this testifier. Ms. Yamaki, if you'd like to proceed. And then if there's anyone else that's not registered in the gallery, you can make your way up to proceed right after. Go ahead when you're ready. Mahalo.
Aloha and good afternoon. I'm Tina Yamaki with the Retail Merchants of Hawaii, and we respectfully oppose this measure. E-liquids worldwide are flavored for the most part. When they make it, there's no flavoring in it. You gotta put something in it, sometimes even including the tobacco flavor. This bill would essentially ban all e-liquids as well as flavored tobacco products and compel people to purchase these goods online or on the black market or on military bases where these things are still being sold, or try to make it themselves and essentially force many of our small local businesses who sell these items to shut down and leaving many of our families, friends, and neighbors out of work. Many whom are underage are obtaining their cigarettes and vape products and devices from their parents, family members, older age friends, and purchasing them on the black market. But we want to let you know, when minors come into a vape store and the parents or older person goes, "Which one do you want?" the seller doesn't sell it to them. They'll ask them outside, "What do you want?" They'll go in and buy it. When the product leaves the store, we don't know what happens to it afterwards. We're wondering why there are not more stricter laws and consequences aimed at minors who are actually vaping and breaking the laws when purchasing tobacco products and smoking them. Why is the Department of Education not cracking down on those vapes on campus, as so many students are doing this? The high school students that are working in our retail stores have all told me teachers and security turn a blind eye to those students who are vaping on campus, and that's very concerning. And why are the adults who are legally able to purchase these items going to be denied this just because of some minors? We have to really look at this. I mean, I'm from Wahiawa. Actually, my clothes live in Mililani. My parents are in Wahiawa. I'm always there. There's about 4 or 5 small vape shops where the people not only have their stores there, they live in Wahiawa. I see them at Foodland. I see them at Long's. And those are the ones who put their life savings into their stores, and now they're going to go bankrupt. They're going to have to close down. And those are the things we need to think about. If the aim is towards youth, then let's make sure that if you break the law, there's consequences. Right now, there are none. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yamaki. Just a few quick questions, and appreciate all the work you're doing, and really appreciate, like you mentioned, all the law-abiding retailers and just the service they provide to our community. I was curious, did any of them sell flavored cigarettes right now?
I think a couple of them have menthol cigarettes.
Menthol.
Menthol. Not a bunch of them. Mostly vape stores are vape products, but there's a few in town, I believe, that do have, and I think on the neighbor islands, but that doesn't.
Okay, because I'm just curious, because I know in 2009, Congress got rid of the flavors in cigarettes, right? And so that's why you can't buy clove cigarettes at the store like folks used to, right? Or whatever flavors they had. I mean, they did switch some to cigars because that was exempted. And so I guess I'm just curious, because obviously we did it to cigarettes, but then we didn't, because vaping is new, we didn't apply the law back then to vaping, right? But I'm just curious why now retailers wouldn't simply be able to do the same they do with regular cigarettes, like sell the tobacco flavored, because tobacco is allowed in the bill.
So I don't vape. But my understanding is from a lot of my adult friends who do, they like the sweetness, or the vaping was the one that got them away from cigarettes. So they don't want to do the menthol. They do something else instead.
Oh, no, I hear that. I've had that conversation with my friends. And I think everyone acknowledges, like, oh, everyone smokes more when they vape because it's more accessible. You're in the car, you're at home, you're in the bathroom, and the flavor makes it more attractive. And so I definitely agree. Like, I think that's part of the conversation, right? Is that the flavors are intentional by the industry to get youth addicted. And after decades of seeing smoking trends going down, suddenly reversed, and we're seeing this, 1 in 5 middle schoolers, 1 in 3 high schoolers. And I agree with you. Schools should be enforcing, families should be enforcing. But if we know the intent of the flavor is to addict, and we know the intent of the flavor and it being created is to increase usage, I'm just curious why the preference wouldn't be like, oh, let's just stick to, we're going to sell cigarettes to the pack-a-day smokers that are doing regular tobacco, but we can get rid of the worst part of the situation.
I don't think the intent is to hook people. I mean, you want people to buy your product. I get that part. But the part is, I'm 12 years old and I can get vape products. Why not vape? I'm not going to get in trouble for it. Who's going to stop me? Parents aren't going to stop me. School's not going to stop me. Police aren't going to stop me. So why should I stop? And that's the attitude a lot of them have right now. And even those that we talk to who do vape, family, friends, kids, you kind of when you're in retail, you kind of become like everyone's priest, where they come and they kind of confess to you about their retailing habits, sometimes. So we hear these stories, but there's no consequences, so why stop? And the consequence from this bill is going to be towards the law-abiding retailers who are trying to make a living so they can feed their family, have a home.
Okay, appreciate your testimony. All right, was there any questions from fellow council members? Mahalo. And I know you'll still be engaged as the bill moves through. This is just the first committee, so happy to talk story more. I don't see any other in-person, not registered testifiers. I don't know if everyone is online, but we'll go to remote testimony registered. I have Elizabeth Hicks. I see you present. If you want to unmute and proceed when you're ready.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. My name is Elizabeth Hicks with the Consumer Choice Center. Simply put, this bill will do more harm than good if passed. Enacting a flavor ban for vaping products will push adult consumers to switch back to smoking combustible tobacco. Sadly, 1,400 Hawaiians lose their lives to smoking-related illnesses every year, but considering that studies have shown vaping to be 95% less harmful than smoking, and that adults who use flavored vaping products are 2.3 times more likely to quit smoking cigarettes, ensuring that adult consumers have access to the vaping products they prefer will lead to fewer cigarette smoking-related deaths and illnesses within Honolulu. There are over 100,000 Hawaiians who vape, and according to data from the Hawaiian Journal of Medicine and Public Health, the largest demographic of Hawaiian vapers are actually 65 years in age and older and started vaping as a means to quit smoking cigarettes. Banning flavored vaping products will encourage these former smokers to switch back to smoking cigarettes and will ultimately lead to increases in smoking-related healthcare costs, which are already costing Hawaiian taxpayers over $141 million annually. Again, this bill is well-intentioned, but the proposed flavor ban is simply misguided, so I respectfully encourage you to embrace harm reduction by rejecting this bill. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mahalo, Ms. Hicks. Any questions for the testifier? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. We'll move on to Mr. Bentley, if you want to proceed, and then after that, Lindsay Strode.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. My name is Guy Bentley. I'm Director of Consumer Freedom at the Reason Foundation, and we're a nonprofit public policy think tank. We applaud the intention to reduce tobacco use amongst youth, but we are concerned that a prohibition response to a public health problem could result in unintended consequences, such as was seen in the prohibition of flavored tobacco passed by San Francisco in 2018. Yale University's Abigail Friedman found that after the ban was enacted, San Francisco area youth had double the odds of smoking compared to similar jurisdictions without a tobacco flavor ban. And to speak to back to a point that was made earlier, e-cigarettes are safer than combustible cigarettes. That's why the Food and Drug Administration has also authorized 23 of them as appropriate for the protection of public health. According to the CDC, youth e-cigarette use in Hawaii has fallen 50% since 2019. And smoking has fallen 43%. So it is possible to dramatically reduce youth tobacco use while avoiding the unintended consequences associated with prohibition. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer questions.
Mahalo, Mr. Bentley. Any questions for the testifier? Sensing none, thank you for your testimony. I don't see Lindsay Stroud or Strode. Madam Clerk, is Lindsay Strode or Rima Corey online?
Lindsay Stroud is not present, Chair, but
Okay.
Rima is online.
Okay, perfect. Rima, I see you right there in front of me on the screen. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Rima Corey. I'm one of the founding members of the National Hookah Community Association, which was established to protect and preserve the rich cultural tradition of hookah. First and foremost, it's important to know that hookah is not vape. Hookah has been around for nearly 1,000 years. It's been practiced by Middle Easterners, Persians, Turks, Indians, North Africans. It's very much a part of these cultures, and it's a centerpiece for coming together and connecting with others. It's also used in celebratory events and often offered to other Middle Easterners that visit as a sign of hospitality and respect, as has been the case for hundreds of years. A lot of people don't realize this, but hookah tobacco is inherently flavored, and that has been the case, like I said, for centuries. So, again, we don't want hookah to be conflated with vape. It's very different. And if you've ever seen a hookah, they are 3 feet tall. They're very difficult to conceal, so you can't hide it in your backpack or pocket and smoke it in the bathroom at recess. They take about almost 20 to 30 minutes to set up. And you need hot coals, so you can't just set them up anywhere. A typical hookah has 10 parts and components, and they generally cost $200 up to like $1,000. So they're very cost prohibitive for youth. In fact, according to the FDA and the CDC, hookah is just simply not being used by youth. According to the 2021 CDC survey of high schoolers that smoke flavored tobacco products, hookah use is somewhere around 1%. And that number has dropped over the past decade. And according to the FDA, it's not a top priority for enforcement because, quote unquote, youth is not using hookah probably because of its cumbersome nature. So it's very different. It has a huge cultural significance for all of those minority communities that use and practice hookah. Hookahs are not being confiscated in schools. It's just simply not a problem. And we just want to make sure that lawmakers are well informed so that they can avoid these unintended consequences of decimating this rich cultural tradition that is quite simply not an issue with youth and not related to vape. So our ask as the National Hookah Community Association is that you'd consider exempting hookah just as California exempted it in their statewide flavored tobacco ban. Massachusetts exempted hookah lounges in their statewide ban. Los Angeles, which was also mentioned earlier, also exempted hookah. So again, there would be a huge cultural impact if this rich cultural tradition is erased, and when everyone is so focused on diversity and equity and inclusion, we want to do everything that possible to protect our right to practice our cultural traditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahalo, Ms. Correa. I did have a quick question. As someone that's not a cultural expert, what is the traditional ingredients in, I guess, what we could consider?
So what's in hookah tobacco so it's a good question. Hookah tobacco is a mixture, and actually the tobacco itself is probably only 5% of that mixture. So there's glycerin, there's pectin, there's flavoring, there's other things involved that makes it actually very wet. So it's very moist, and if you put it in a hookah, it actually doesn't even burn the tobacco itself because you have to put a foil over. So it goes into like almost like a bowl. You put the hookah tobacco in it, and then you put a foil over it and then hot coals over it. Some people use like a metal heat management device to really keep the coals away from the tobacco. So the tobacco doesn't actually burn. It actually just heats up and aerosolizes. And then that aerosolized or vapor actually ends up going into the hookah and through like water and then through a hose. So if you ever seen any movies like, that's like set in the Middle East, like you'll see all these hookah cafes and people have these like big ornate things. Like they can be very decorative. And if you ever go into a Middle Easterner's home, you'll often see one just kind of as decoration around. And generally people who smoke hookah statistically only do so, like 80% do so once a month or less. So it's not like cigarettes or vape, to be honest, where they're compulsively using it all throughout the day. This is something that's generally used as a special occasion, a special get together. And it really does create a bonding experience because you sit there for like a 30-minute session and you're kind of connecting and communicating and talking and getting like almost catching up with friends and relatives.
Yeah, I appreciate that insight. Just to make sure I heard correctly, so traditionally you're saying culturally it was tobacco, glycerin, pectin, or what
and
was?
Flavorings. Oh, and so back in the day, what they would do is they would put honey. Actually, so hookah tobacco originally was made with honey, and it was called masal in Arabic, which means with honey. So it was always flavored. And then, of course, over time they would put in dried apples to give it like a distinctive flavor. So, like I said, the flavor component, like hookah tobacco, has always been. And for centuries has been a flavored tobacco product. And I think a lot of people don't realize that by passing a broad flavored tobacco ban, they would be including hookah, which has nothing to do, there's no teen hookah epidemic.
Mahalo for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Chair Waters.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So you're not against the bill as it relates to vaping, are you?
No.
Vaping,
in
like
fact,
the liquidized
so we're not actually, we're not advocating for vaping or one way or the other. We have nothing to do with vaping, and we actually do support reasonable regulations that address youth access and usage of flavored tobacco products. And we promote best practices and want to ensure that kids don't have access to tobacco products. But we are not involved with vape. We don't represent vape. We are really just advocating to protect the rich cultural tradition of hookah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Since there are no other questions, mahalo, Ms. Corey, for your time. And I see Angela Melody Young present. Please proceed when you're ready.
Aloha. Oh, I was not muted. Was I muted?
Nope, you're good
Okay.
to go. Hello.
So, okay. Hi, Chair, and the Council. Angela Melody Young testifying on behalf of CARES. So this discussion about vapes is about tax parity, defining vapes, age limits, online sales, and a lot of things. But the most simplified and focused thing to say is the very bottom line of it is vapes are bad for students, and the most simple thing to do is to set a law about how there cannot be any more vapes in the county of Honolulu and the state of Hawaii. And the council has power to enact this. I'd like to correct the testifier from the last hearing who said council does not have this power. It does in the Hawaii Revised Statute 328J-15, the DOH chapter. And we'll talk about this next hearing because I don't want to get ahead of myself. So the legislation that got passed this year at the state, Representative Tricia LaChica helped enact it. And this was a few months ago, and this legislation took 8 years to pass. It is a tax parity vape legislation. And that's what the Health Institute is celebrating. They won an award for Hawaii Children and Youth for their work with the Youth Council, who are advocates to support banning vapes. Also, they got this bill passed, and then the year before, the state did act also. So this is 2022 season. The House Bill 1570, it didn't make it as a law because it became a polarizing issue. So polarizing means that it causes a divide, a division, right? Because the lawmakers have to choose to support the tobacco businesses or to help the students, right? So it causes a polarizing divide, a division.
Thank you, Angela.
In the subject matter.
I do have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So is the 2022 bill, is that the one that was vetoed, or is that that's a different bill?
Yes, that was vetoed.
Okay. Why was it? Do we know why it was vetoed?
So because the chair at the time, chair of Health, Human Services, and Homelessness Committee, he added reporting and testing requirements for the state agencies, and it was to test for the flavors. And they thought it was a poison amendment, or they thought that he was poisoning the bill, but he wasn't. The chair wasn't poisoning. It was very legal language he added.
Okay.
Because and then so the students and also the public, they didn't get the legal technical language, so they thought that it was poisoning the bill. And then because he added a lot of standardized scientific testing amendments and legal language to safeguard the state from legal challenges.
Okay, that's super. No, that's super helpful. I appreciate it. Any other questions for the testifier? Sensing none, thank you, Ms. Young. And then we do have, I believe, a phone testifier, but they're still on. It's an 808 number ending in 574. If you're able to unmute yourself,
Yes, good
you can announce your name and proceed. Mahalo.
Sure. My name is Ra Long, owner and operator of R&K Grocery and Liquor, DBA Fred Sundries. My store is located in Chinatown. My family and I have been running that business for about 10 years. First and foremost, I would like to thank the members of the council for giving me an opportunity to speak. I've been hearing the word youth mentioned quite often. There seems to be a big push behind the curtain of that word. Some of the top 10 things you can Google on what struggles the youth have in this country: obesity, drugs, single-parent household, depression, social media, bullying. Those are some of the items that kids are dealing. Tobacco doesn't even crack the top 20. Council members, as a store owner and a person who is at the forefront of one of the most dangerous areas in the state, our youth are not coming in asking to buy tobacco products. Your concern, I say this with so much urgency as a parent, should be truly shifted to what is being sold on the streets. The number of youth I witnessed ranging from middle to high school high on drugs should be your number one focus. According to the most recent national survey on drug use, youth cigarette smoking is the lowest in a generation at 1.3%. Menthol cigarette usage is even lower at 0.8%. Cigars and chewing tobacco are just as low. According to the CDC and Hawaii Health Matters Youth Risk Behavior Survey, youth smoking rate for Hawaii has decreased from 15% in 2009 to 3% in 2022. The same survey by Hawaii Health Matters also reported young teen e-cig usage declined 10% from 2019 to 2021. This is a result of responsible owners like myself and education, not prohibition. Prohibition will only increase the illicit market. I agree that kids shouldn't use products meant for adults, which is why the legal age to purchase tobacco product is set at 21. Bill 46 will violate the rights for adults who are 21 and over. These adults have the right to make choices for themselves for a product that is already highly regulated. All Bill 46 will do is push the market to the streets. Responsible license owners like myself always check IDs. Ask yourself, will illegal sellers do the same if Bill 46 is passed? According to CNN Money, the state of Hawaii is ranked 42 out of 50 states for starting a business. Wallet Hub ranked the state of Hawaii at 43 for business costs. Data from a representative for Philip Morris, which owns Marlboro, has 42% of all flavored tobacco sold in the state of Hawaii in Waikiki. Ask yourself, what percentage of that 42% are tourists? My guess is a very high percentage because the locals are not paying the high prices in Waikiki. This data is just from one company, not including ITG, owner of Coors, or RJ Reynolds, who owns Camel and Newport. Businesses are slowly recovering from COVID. Don't step on our heads when we're trying to stay afloat. Chinatown, and I'm sure other places in Honolulu, are filled with vacant buildings. Don't add to the problem, be the solution. I urge the council to look for solutions that are proven to make a real difference and support the retail community, like requiring the scanning of IDs for every tobacco purchases, larger penalties on retailers who fail inspections, and education to support our clerks on selling responsibly. Please oppose Bill 46. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Could you also repeat your name for the clerks? I don't think they heard it the first time.
Sure. My name is Ra Long, owner and operator of R&K Grocery and Liquor, Fred Sundries in Chinatown.
I think we did have a few questions. I was curious, and then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Dos Santos. So you're a retailer, so you're selling cigarettes and vapes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so I was just curious, because I'm assuming right now you're not selling flavored cigarettes except for menthol and regular tobacco. Is that correct?
I'm selling flavors. I'm selling from menthol to ultra menthol. I mean, the vapes are all the flavors. Whatever I have is what I have.
Okay, and because I'm just curious, because I mean, really, this is the nicotine, right? It's what's addicting, and so I'm just curious why you couldn't sell vape products that are the same, of course, we're taking out menthol, but in terms of the regular tobacco is the cigarettes you're selling. And then, of course, I don't want to encourage, people inhaling stuff, but this really is flavored tobacco products, right? So if someone has a vape product that's different, of course, I would encourage that. But I'm just curious where the issue is, because we already took out flavors, except for the exception in the federal law, right, from cigarettes. So what's the issue with the vape products?
Well, here's my thing. So I don't remember when I grew up, how many flavors of chips were there? Right? You had regular, you had spicy, and you maybe had barbecue and sour cream. But now you have every single flavor from sriracha to, tapatio sauce. Same thing with Spam. I just saw maple syrup Spam in the stores. I mean, it's just flavored. And I feel like you guys are targeting the tobacco company because they're offering different flavors. Well, so is the soda industry, chips industry, snack industry, gum industry. I mean, why aren't we targeting them? It just doesn't make any sense that suddenly flavor is a bad thing now.
I appreciate
if you look at the data, what's killing our youth is obesity, not tobacco.
Yeah, thank you for the insight. I'll throw it over to Councilmember Dos Santos. Sam, I think he has a few questions for you as well.
Hi, Ra. Thanks for testifying today. I appreciate that you're holding things down in, as you point out, one of the more dangerous corners of Chinatown and keeping your lights on. I did just want to ask, proportionately, if you could estimate how much of your gross sales come from tobacco products in general. I just want to understand, because we have to represent from the retailers here, just what that is. I know you sell a lot of other stuff too, drinks and snacks and chips.
So if you were just directly tobacco products, you're looking at 30%. Indirectly is a lot more, because you have to understand people are coming in and not just buying cigarettes. They are buying snacks, food items for their home. So it's just not cigarettes. That's the issue here. So it's more because everything is tied in.
Okay.
But you're looking at about 30% of my revenue comes from tobacco products, and indirectly a lot more.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I believe that
Any more questions?
Registered testimony. Thank you for your time. Again, this is the first committee meeting, so everyone that testified today, appreciate your insight and encourage your continued participation. Madam Clerk, just want to double check. I don't believe we have any other testifiers online or by phone.
Chair, there are none.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So members, before I make my recommendation, I welcome discussion. Chair Waters.
Thank you. Can I actually ask a question for either the representative from the Department of Health or Mr. Rosen?
Yeah. Since you threw out two names, maybe you want to throw out the question, and then if either of them wants to come up and answer, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, when we're talking about flavored tobacco products, right, just based on the conversation we're having here, we got vaping, we got cigarettes. I imagine cigars would fall in there as well, and hookah. What else are we talking about when we talk about flavored tobacco products? I mean, because ultimately it says, the deal says any flavored tobacco product, right? But a lot of the conversation and the testimony is talking about vaping and about menthol cigarettes. But we're not talking about hookah and cigars, right? So what are we doing here? Are we going to regulate all of it? Because we already heard from the hookah folks. But what else? What other products are we talking about here?
I don't see anyone jumping up. I'd be happy to participate in the discussion and invite anyone. I know Councilmember Dos Santos Sam had comments as well, but that's a great point. I think this bill is fairly broad in terms of the flavor component, right? I think that's probably, just for discussion, seems like that's where a lot of the bills start, and then they get whittled down by testimony and input from different folks.
I mean, obviously, all tobacco products are not healthy, right? All of them. But what the advocates, they're not asking us to ban all tobacco products, or are you? At some point in...
Well, the flavor ban on tobacco product would be all flavored tobacco products. So yes, all. So but like you just mentioned, from a health perspective, purely from a health perspective, all those tobacco products you mentioned have toxins and are toxic. So there's no health justification to exempt any of them.
Right. I mean, but if you really want to do the right thing and for the public to keep them healthy, you'd ban all tobacco products, right?
If we could, yeah, we'd like that, but correct.
Why can't you?
Well, if that's an issue you'd like to take up, the Department of Health would likely support that from a health perspective.
Yeah, I mean, is there a reason why we can't ban all tobacco products? I mean, Chair Wire and I dealt with plastics a couple of years ago, and don't mean to open up a whole can of worms, but the point is that sometimes you got to take small bites, right? And it takes time, over time. And really what we're talking about is flavored tobacco products, because clearly flavored tobacco products are aimed at enticing children and young people to get hooked on nicotine, which, as we know, is dangerous, right? But to me, and part of the reason why I co-introduced the bill was because we don't want children to be using these products. And vaping seems like the most often used and the most attractive tobacco product for young people.
That's correct.
Do you find that menthol cigarettes are being used by young people as well, or hookah for that matter, or cigars?
So for menthol cigarettes, our combustible cigarette youth and adult rates are going down. But of those who use, even amongst youth, the ones that do use, over 50% use menthol. And for adults that use combustible cigarettes, depending on demographics, it's on the state. Overall state adult menthol use is about 65%, but if you look at certain demographics, it's even higher, like 70, 80% for certain ethnicities like Native Hawaiians.
Okay. I mean, is cigars a problem?
Well, cigars, again, have a lot of carcinogens in it, and they also cause different forms of cancer.
Sure.
Yeah.
But again, if the focus is trying to protect our youth, do we have a problem with young people smoking flavored cigars? And what are we talking about when we're talking about a flavored cigar?
So flavored cigars are a problem. If you go to convenience stores, they do sell them in various flavors that are packaged in a way that's attractive to youth. So those are very important to also include.
I mean, the only one I can think of is Swisher Sweets, right? That you see at various stores. But what other kinds of cigars would come in? I mean, we want this to pass, right? And I think most people would agree that young people smoking or the e-cigarettes and vaping, that people disagree. But we don't want the cigar industry and the cigar folks to come out and say, hey, don't include us, right? If we can get a good solid bill passed and lessen the amount of opponents, just from a strategy point of view.
So like you mentioned, it would be the flavored cigars. So according to this bill, so tobacco flavored cigars would not be prohibited.
And how do you test what is flavored and what's not? I mean, obviously the vaping, right, with the name just suggests that it's flavored. Swisher Sweets suggests that it's flavored, but you know, some other devices, again, back to cigars, how could you tell if something is flavored? Who's going to test that?
So the way that other jurisdictions have handled that is to make sure that in the definition, it's defined in such a way that based on the name, the packaging, the marketing, the smell, or the taste by just an ordinary consumer would deem it a flavored product.
But when we're talking about issuing a fine, right? Does somebody from the Department of Health, if somebody makes a complaint, as you said, it's probably going to be complaint driven. Somebody makes a complaint. Do we have a tester at the Department of Health who's going to?
No, that won't be necessary.
Yeah, so how practically speaking, I think that's what council members have brought up. How do you practically test it? Because ultimately, if we can prevent people contesting the law to begin with, right? How would we prove? I mean, I imagine there has to be some level of proof as well, right? That it is in fact flavored. Or is it there's just a common sense test?
Yeah, so in our testimony, we did offer some amendments to the definition that would address that issue. Okay. And as far as enforcement, we have enforcement mechanisms that are in place for state policy. And given that this issue has been taken up at the state, we've already had conversations about what enforcement of a flavor prohibition would look like. So those conversations have started, and if this continues, we'll continue as well.
Okay, no, thank you so much for the helpful advice. We'll take a look at the testimony. As Councilmember Wire pointed out, that we just got through first reading. We still have to go through 2 more readings and another committee hearing. So we'll definitely take a look at that because we want to make sure that it's enforceable. Yeah. And I appreciate you coming out to testify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo, Chair. Not to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to do some brief follow-up because I think those are really important questions. And so I'm curious, like with tobacco products, what is the root of the, what causes the addiction?
The nicotine.
Okay, so
for sure.
It's the tobacco product itself with the nicotine that's the addiction, is what I'm hearing.
The nicotine is the addictive component, yeah.
So whether it's cigars or vapes or cigarettes, which we've already banned, right? So we already enforced that at gas stations. You already can't sell those cherry cigarettes or the cloves, which, the cloves now became cigars. So folks that smoke clove cigarettes can go buy the clove cigars, right? But I guess what I'm wondering is all the things like the menthol and the flavors and all that stuff is meant to soothe or make using the product more palatable. Is that your understanding?
Yes, so menthol is an additive that has multiple roles or purposes. And yeah, a big one is it makes it more soothing. It has soothing properties in it. So it makes it easier, especially for first-time users. But and also there's a chemical component that also activates the addictive component in your brain. So it's in there. It's a powerful driver of addiction.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification because I guess I see it as we're not getting rid of all tobacco, but we're taking away the mechanisms that are used to increase tobacco usage and increase addiction and make it more likely, especially when we know, how bad the pandemic is right now with 1 in 3, 1 in 5 middle schoolers, 1 in 3 high schoolers. And then folks or youth that are using these cigarettes are 4 times more likely to, start smoking, 3 times more likely to become smokers. I think it's really the trend that's so concerning. Growing up around a lot of smokers, having smoked at points in my life, like, it's like, I thought we were on this downward trend, and now it's like, oh, we're totally creating a pathway, you know, that's going to be a public health crisis. I don't know if you have any follow-up on that, but feel free to chime in.
Oh, it is a public health crisis. So it was declared by the Surgeon General in 2018 as an epidemic. And flavors are the driver. So it's the enticement piece. It's, you know, the advertising brings the kids to the product, the flavors get them to try, and the nicotine brings them back. So we look at this as a way to address the enticement factor for youth.
No, and I appreciate that, because even hookah, like I had friends from when they came back from Saudi Arabia, they lived over there, brought me a hookah as a gift, but the hookah I've experienced wasn't like, you know, sweet sex or watermelon or pog or all these flavors that we see today, right? Like it's clearly like the marketing and the direction we're going in the industry is just very different. And so I see value in it, but I think the conversation is good, right? Like, where do we want to maybe look closer at the language? Councilmember Dos Santos, did you have questions?
Thank you. Yeah, I have a number of sort of questions. I'm not quite sure who to direct it to, but before I start, I just want to say I agree with Chair Waters and, you know, want this bill to move forward. Years ago, I was on the board of the Good Beginnings Alliance, became the Children's Action Network, and this was one of the issues we worked on. But I do think we have to get it right. And part of getting it right is making sure we're not inadvertently doing something that we don't intend to do. And so I have a number of questions kind of about the definitions of characterizing flavor and versus flavored product and the presumption of flavor. I don't know if Core is the right person or someone from DOH maybe. Sorry to put you on the spot some more.
Maybe, well.
Maybe I'll ask them and see who wants to take a crack at it. But, you know, right now, as the bill is drafted, there's a presumption of flavor. Specifically, a product is presumed to be a flavored tobacco product if it has or uses text or images on the tobacco's products or labeling, or if the retailer or manufacturer makes a statement that it imparts some sort of flavor. For cigars, the purpose is flavor. It's not pog or watermelon, but to sell a Monte Cristo versus a Romeo and Julieta, the retailer and also the manufacturer makes certain claims about the inherent flavors within the tobacco, right? It's more oaky or more spicy or more pepper, whatever. And so if a retailer were to put a little plaque outside of their display case saying, this wonderful Monte Cristo cigar, which is grown in the hills of Dominican Republic, blah, 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 imparts flavors of vanilla and bourbon and pepper, does that automatically make it a banned product? And I bring this up because the one of the cigar distributors on the island is in my district and brought this up. So how do we distinguish in this legislation between that situation, which is sort of an inherent part of the tobacco, versus the POG flavored juice vape thing? So that's sort of one set of questions that I'd like to explore in future conversations. And then in the bill, there's also a specification that that a flavored tobacco product found in a retailer's possession may be seized by an inspector, but there's no definition of who that inspector would be, and we don't seem to have an enforcement agency. So is that HPD? Can HPD presumptively seize something, and then the retailer has to go back and prove that it's not flavored? I just want to make sure that we're going to get it crystal clear right up front. I don't know if anyone can address that. Maybe it's
more of a legal question. I can take it back.
Question. Yeah.
I'm happy to take it back.
And since this is the first committee meeting, we can continue to get CORE's input and admin's input. Understanding it's a council-initiated bill, but any other questions, Councilmember?
No, I think those are the specific ones. Everything else, you know, the vape pens, kids, stop vaping. Please stop vaping. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just a quick question. First of all, Councilmember Dos Santos Town, that's a good question. Just automatically, my thought is naturally flavored versus additives. And I don't think we are going down the road of naturally flavored. I believe that the introducers have consciously targeted those businesses who are deliberately adding flavor to attract youth to these products. So I think if there's concern over naturally flavored, then that needs to be clarified, but it's a great question. Thank you.
Chair Waters.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Kiana. I think that's a good distinction there. That's infused rather than naturally occurring. But yeah, I just got a question, and to the extent that anybody in the audience, including CORE, can answer, what exactly are we preempted from doing? Right? I know we're preempted from regulating these types of products, but can we put a ban or a requirement that you have to be 21 or a certain age to buy certain products? Are we preempted from doing that?
I think you're preempted from sales.
Anything.
All
Sales.
Sales.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
That's a really great point, because then due to the preemption, the Big Island law actually would have been invalidated, but thankfully the state did increase the age. Any other? No discussion. I see the hand, kinda. My inclination, given that this is first committee, and given that I think the substance of the bill is there, was to move it along. I recommend passage, and then of course we'll continue to engage with folks that have suggested amendments and ideas, given that really what we're looking at is getting rid of the flavoring in nicotine tobacco products, right? So it doesn't stop people from having non-tobacco nicotine vapes. All it does is set a standard that really already applies to cigarettes, except for the menthol exemption. So, that already applies to cigarettes since 2009 to all tobacco products. And I think it is appropriate to continue the conversation, just given, as mentioned, it is an epidemic, was actually declared so. So it's not just hyperbolic when we say it. Councilmember Toba.
I'll be voting with reservations. I understand the concern, but I think it's broad, and I think we need to further the discussion. So with reservations.
Totally understood. Any other reservations? Or first, I'll be requesting a vote on the amendment, I believe. Okay. So the chair first recommends that Bill 46, 2023 be amended to the hand-carried CD1. Any discussion, objections? Councilmember Toba, were there reservations to the amendment or to both? Okay, so amendment, any other reservations to the amendment? No. Okay, noting the reservations of Councilmember Toba, Bill 46 is amended to the CD1. Chair then recommends Bill 46, 2023 CD1 be reported out for passage on second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion, objections, reservations on that? Noting again, reservations, Councilmember Toba, Councilmember Okimoto. Yeah, reservations. Okay. Sensing no other, so ordered. Yeah. Okay. Mahalo everyone that testified on all sides, and so continue to reach out, but appreciate everyone that came down in person in particular. Turning to agenda item number 2 for action, Bill 38, 2023 CD1 amends Chapter 38, Articles 3 and 8, revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021 is amended relating to concessions. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed CD2, OCS 2023-767, dated August 17, 2023, 1:47 p.m. to the bill. For your information, the summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. We also have a hand-carried proposed CD2, OCS 2023-774, dated August 22nd, 2023, to the bill submitted by myself, making the following amendments. Section 2 of the bill amending RH Section 38-3.2 is 1, deleting the designation for subsection A, 2, in subdivision 3, adding a definition for handicapped or blind persons, 3, transposes subdivision 11 and subdivision 12. Number 4, in renumbered subdivision 11, relating to the Hans Larange baseball facility, retains a definition of permittee, professional sports activity, and Hans Larange baseball facility within the subdivision. Number 5, in renumbered subdivision 12, relating to parking stalls for shared micromobility vehicles, it removes the underscoring because this subdivision has already been added to the ROH and adds a definition for shared micromobility vehicle business. And number 6, deletes subsection B because the definitions are contained in subdivision 11, while also making other technical and non-substantive amendments. We have, I believe, Director and Deputy Director present from Enterprise Services. If there's any additional comment, feel free to come up. Okay, were there any questions for the administration? Seeing none, we'll go to testifiers. Clerks, do we have any in-person testifiers for this item?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, and we'll just ask that any unregistered testifiers come up to the podium. Since seeing none in the community, or in the gallery rather, we will now go to remote testimony. Madam Clerk, is Winston Welch online?
Chair, the testifier is not present.
Okay, I appreciate that. Are there any other testifiers unregistered?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Note that I believe Mr. Welch had provided comments and I did see his testimony. Members, is there any discussion before I make my recommendation? Hearing none. The chair is going to recommend that Bill 38, 2023, CD1 be amended to the hand-carried CD2 OCS 2023-774 dated August 22nd, 2023, 3:17 p.m. Any discussion, objections, reservations? Hearing none. Bill 38 CD1 is amended to the CD2, and the chair then recommends that Bill 38 CD2 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion, objections, reservations on that? Hearing none, so ordered. And then that brings us to agenda item number 3 for action on resolution. Mahalo, Director, Deputy Director. Resolution 23-162, initiating amendments to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu, 1973, amended 2017 edition as amended. This relates to the establishment of a climate resiliency fund. Members, we have posted to the agenda proposed CD1, OCS 2023-733, dated August 15, 2023, 10:43 a.m., submitted by Council Member Cordero. The summary of amendments is listed on the agenda. Councilor, did you want to provide any additional words at this time?
Thank you. First off, Chair, I know that I'm not a voting member of your committee, so I just want to thank you for allowing me to join you today and to present my amendments that have been posted on the agenda already. And this was through the discussion from the past council meeting and line of questioning with the regarding if funding would go directly to streams, and then the concerns that we've had throughout different budget seasons. And so that's why I wanted to highlight the waterways, streams, drainage ways, channels, and other waterways. So that's my amendment. Do you want me to read it all?
No need, since it's posted, but I appreciate the
okay, thank you.
Yeah, the explanation and also the insight in proposing it. I think it's very appropriate and applicable to the intent and purpose of the amendment. We do have, I believe, Director Kawano from Department of Budget and Fiscal Services for the administration. I think, have some quick questions that you want to come up, Director, but I'll first throw it out to the other council members present. Councilor Dos Santos, Tam, if you want to.
Thank you, Chair. This is just sort of for the record and for everyone's understanding. So the proposal would be to dedicate the same amount that's going into the Affordable Housing Fund as well as the Clean Water Natural Lands Fund. Director, how much currently goes into each of these funds? And that would give us a sense of how much would also go into this new Climate Resiliency Fund.
The amount going into the two funds currently approximate about $8.3 million
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Chair Waters, and then Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. Would you like to go first? Okay.
Go ahead, Floor Leader.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Hi, Director Kawano. Have you had the opportunity to just look at my clarification or further highlighting of streams and waterways in the resolution?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay, and any opinions about it?
No, I don't have any comment or
Okay.
opinions. No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Chair Waters.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Director Kawano. As far as you know, I mean, the ENV director is not here, but as far as you know, is the administration still advocating for a stormwater utility fee?
Yeah, actually, it's under DFM, Stormwater Utility, that program. We are.
And what could you explain what a stormwater utility fee is and what it's going to be used for?
The stormwater utility fee will be used for the construction of stormwater facilities and stormwater capture system to ensure that stormwater gets either reused or directed in such a way that we don't cause significant erosion or pollution, on island. It's a fee. It's a charge. It's not a tax, and it's something that will probably be borne by property owners in a manner similar to the real property tax charge. It'll probably be based on some square footage charge of some sort. And I recall that when current Director Babcock was Director of DFM, he testified that if you have property that absorbs water, you probably will get a credit for that. If you have impermeable surfaces where the water will run off your property into the next adjoining one, or into stormwater catchment systems, you probably pay the full fee. But yeah, I think the program's been deferred for a while.
Right.
As of this time.
So I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is because one of the things you testified to last time was that we already dedicate money dealing with, in the current budget, to dealing with climate change, right? Which includes, that rain bomb that happened in my district 2 years ago. Obviously, the stormwater system was not adequate to handle that. Similar to what happened in Maloa, the stormwater system was not adequate to handle that. But and this isn't just the Blangiardi administration. It actually started before that with the previous administration advocating for this stormwater utility. But when we say that the money is already allocated to deal with climate change, like I said, these rain bombs, I believe, are part of climate change. That's not entirely true because we have to impose another fee on top of property taxes in order to rebuild our stormwater system. So perhaps another selling point for this resolution is that we could set aside money through this charter amendment to take care of the stormwater utility so that we don't have to charge local folks, property owners, more money. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand your thought process, but my understanding is that building an appropriate stormwater utility system will require more than what we can afford through the property tax system. So it's going to be above and beyond that. And my comment was that climate change preparation is a priority of the mayor, and I feel that the allocation of our revenue base should be determined through the budget process, as we go through the operating budget and CIP budget. And we do place, a high emphasis on climate change, and it's taken seriously. So I didn't feel that an automatic allocation of our real property tax base should happen every year. Because we go through a methodical process through budgeting to allocate funding to address climate change and climate change related issues.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Of course, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. I'm listening to the dialogue between Chair Waters and Director Kawano. As I've stated previously, I do believe that the magnitude of climate change is so great that it should be factored into almost everything that the city and county does, especially as it pertains to infrastructure projects. And so a couple of things. But I still respect Chair Waters for moving this forward to have a dialogue in it. So I do have an oral amendment, but I would like to ask the Director of the Office of Climate Change 2 questions. Aloha, Director. I would just like to find out, because the language on page 1 in the 6 whereas clause is quite broad, but I just need to say it for the record, because very often invasive species management is underfunded within the context of environmental protection, including sometimes at the Department of Land, the state's Department of Land and Natural Resources. And I feel that it is unwise for all policymakers in the state of Hawaii to not adequately fund invasive species management, because the ecological damage is one thing, but the economic damage that many of these invasive species pests could have on our economy, it will be disastrous, especially the brown tree snake. Everyone thinks it's hunky-dory. It's not hunky-dory. If millions of dollars of federal funding were not preventing the brown tree snake from coming to Hawaii, because they have preventative measures around the airports and the ports and DOD at their airports in Guam, all it's going to take is one pregnant brown tree snake to arrive here in Hawaii, and it's going to decimate our native bird species and cause economical chaos. So in this drafting of the resolution, would you consider invasive species management to be included here when you say climate change impacts?
Thank you, Councilmember. Matt Gonzer, Executive Director for the Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I heard a couple comments in there, certainly with respect to different jurisdictional obligations, obviously imports coming into the state and how the Department of Transportation, Department of Ag, and/or DLNR are engaged in that. But if the broader general question is sort of an interpretation of what natural resource management could mean, certainly things like indigenous resource management and other land-based practices with respect to things that are out in the community now, not the city getting involved in where the
That's
state
correct,
has
but I just want to make
oversight.
sure the utilization of those funds could be used for invasive species management. Chair Wire and I were at a town hall in Waimanalo, which was very well attended, for 3 of the invasive species that we're targeting: coconut rhinoceros beetle, little fire ant, and cookie frog. And we are looking in the next budget at perhaps getting the city a little bit more involved, because Maui County funds its Maui Invasive Species Committee. So you have DLNR with the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, and then you have all of the various committees in the counties. And so I do think that there's a potential role for the city to play. So Thank you for answering my question.
May I add on that one note, just for the group's awareness as well? So the Honolulu Board of Water Supply actually is a funder of the two mountain watershed partnerships here on Oahu.
Oh, okay, good to know, good to know.
So they are a supporter in those kinds of efforts to remove invasive plants, ungulates, and to do some of the fencing, because they also know that supports their mission on preservation of the resource.
Okay, thank you. And my second question relates to, I think, what Director Kawano brought up. Do we have a process in place with regard to the city's CIP projects whereby climate change is contemplated in the manner of how they are looking at projects as far as resiliency especially?
I'll defer to Director on the BFS processes, but for the group's awareness, the Department of Design and Construction, when they send out their instructions to agencies on how to request scope and pursue potential funding and projects for the services that they provide, there is now, as of last year, guidance to instruct checking on climate change hazards and risks, and now we're also trying to formalize that through the establishment of climate change design guidelines, which we hope become available for informing public work projects around this time next year.
Okay, but would that not just impact them, but all CIP projects in all departments?
So DDC is the deliverer of projects on behalf of the client agencies, so that's how we would ensure that there's a process by which climate is
any vendor that we, in a procurement process, for example, would be aware of these requirements, correct?
It would just become part and scope of the project that they bid on. Yep.
And lastly, what I wanted to bring up was my proposed oral amendment. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs submitted testimony, as everybody has probably seen, with regard to the value of Native Hawaiian-informed climate change solutions. And so what I would like to propose is on page 1 of the bill, in the 6 whereas clause, where it states in 6 whereas clause in number 1, where it says the Climate Resiliency Fund could support, I'd like to add the terminology, indigenous knowledge-informed solutions, perhaps after green infrastructure or after renewable energy. I'm open, Chair, to where you would insert it, but we looked at the testimony, and between myself and my chief of staff, of course, we were thinking about where was the best place to make an amendment and to be responsive, not just to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, but also to the fact that it would be a useful addition. So I guess I'm asking whether or not you will accept a oral amendment.
I would be more than happy to. Let's walk through its location again. I'm sorry.
Okay, it's page 1, the 6 whereas clause, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says, whereas a climate resiliency fund could support.
Okay.
And then it says in number 1, projects that enhance the city's resiliency to climate change impacts, comma, including investments in green infrastructure, comma. So we could insert it there.
So after that comma, we'll be inserting, and then please.
It could say indigenous knowledge-informed solutions, comma, renewable energy, comma, and coastal protection measures. It could be inserted in 2 different places, but if it doesn't matter, let's put it after green infrastructure.
That's perfect. So just to clarify, paragraph 1 will now read, or as we go into voting on it, projects that enhance the city's resiliency to climate change impacts, comma, including investments in green infrastructure, comma, indigenous knowledge-informed decisions. Solutions, sorry. Comma. Renewable energy, comma, and coastal protection measures.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's
Okay, so we'll also be inserting that same wording as just discussed on page 4, section 4, subsection B. And I believe that's sufficient for OCS.
Yes, in 4C, and so, no, 4D, correct?
Or 4B.
4B.
It's the same.
Okay,
The same.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that.
Okay. So that's the amendment has been discussed and will come up shortly. I'm going to ask Director Kawano just to come up briefly. I know we have one more item. It's already late. And I know I did let the testifiers on the first bill go a little long, but I know it affected folks' businesses, so I wanted to give them the time. Just wanted to clarify. So I know at the last meeting we talked about, and I'm sorry, I heard you talk, or Director Gonser talking about DDC overseeing, I'm assuming, the construction projects. So is the fund itself, as we were talking about at the last meeting, is there a determination of who it will be under, how it will be accessed, you know, how movable the funds are going to be?
If the request for charter amendment is approved by the voters, it appears as though the amendment will create the fund. That'll be a revolving type fund. So to the extent the monies are not used for the purpose specified in the amendment, the funding would roll over into the next fiscal year.
Okay, so just to clarify, so in the budget, do we have to allocate that funding to a specific department for anybody in the city to access it, or can we make it broad enough where folks in any department could come in each year and pull out of that pot of money?
I think it's going to depend on where the fund falls under, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah, so currently, for instance, the Charter Affordable Housing Fund falls under DCS. There's probably going to have to be, unless it's, you know, and I didn't see it in the amended document with regard to the charter, unless it's stated in there, we're probably going to have to go through discussion on where it should fall under.
Yeah.
It's best to be under one department, so there's accountability. I would think, versus several.
Okay.
So,
and I guess that's my question too, is if it's under department, managed under department in the budget, does that mean that's where that money sits within that department? Or it could be used for other types of projects? Like, for example, clean water, I know sits under DLM now, or will be, right? Yeah. And then they can use those funds to go out. And then I think those lands I would assume, go into their inventory, but could be transferred over. But for this, if it's operating funds, like how would that work?
I think we could go through the officer in charge process to assign the responsibility to director of a different department, if you will.
Okay.
So that's probably, that should be available.
Okay.
Should we need to use it.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, because I think for me that's actually makes me feel like these funds are more flexible in terms of being able to be more responsive to situations that arise that may relate to resiliency or climate impacts. I know that we've fleshed that out, but I just wanted to talk through that again. So it seems like if, again, it gets out of council, still we don't know if it would pass, you know, voters.
Yeah, it would have to go through voter approval.
Yeah, yes. But just making sure, it seems like the administration's on the same mindset that you'd want the funds to be as broadly accessible. Obviously, this is more constrained in a way than just being able to move it each year in the budget, but at least this is allocating it to a particular purpose, right? That could be pulled
and
from.
you know, we support, again, climate change preparation, but our preference would be to allocate our monies through the budget process.
Yeah, because maybe we can use some of it for the resilience help in a couple years. We'll see. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Director. Any other questions? Councilmember Toba, then Chair Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going with reservations on this, and I have concerns that this would earmark money towards a special fund and would prevent us from being able to expend monies in the budgetary process for other city services. So with reservations.
Understood. Chair Waters.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out on page 5, section 11, the council shall by ordinance establish other procedures for the administration and expenditures of money in each fund consistent with this section. I think the key is that we're putting the cart before the horse. We have to see whether or not the voters even want to do this. But second, we could do it by ordinance, consistent with this section, which is what we just modified in subsection 4 on page 4. But I do like the idea of being flexible because we have the Director of Emergency Management. If he comes in Public Safety tomorrow and testifies that there's certain measures that we could do to prevent a fire like what happened in Lahaina, well, then that's what we should do. But the important part of this is that the appropriation to each fund shall not substitute for, but shall be in addition to those appropriations historically made for the purposes stated in this section. And while I totally understand what the Director of Budget and Fiscal Services is saying, that ultimately we, through the Budget Committee and the budget process, can determine that we want to make something a priority, you know, let the voters decide if they want to dedicate money for this in particular, right? Because we talk about that every day. We talk about the Lahaina fires being caused by climate change. Why not be proactive and sock some money away for this? It's kind of like a bank account in my mind. That's separate and being proactive. And again, let the people decide. Thank you.
No, thank you. Any other comments before I make my recommendation? Okay. So the chair is going to recommend that Resolution 23-162 be amended to the posted CD1 with additional amendments as discussed to insert indigenous knowledge after green infrastructure. Specifically, where did my language go? Oh, yeah. Indigenous knowledge informed solutions. But thank you, Madam Clerk, for reminding me we need to take testimony. Is there anyone in the chamber, or gallery rather?
Chair, there are none.
None. Okay. Anyone online?
Chair, there's Angela Young.
Okay. Miss Melody Young, I believe you are our only testifier, so please proceed when you're ready, and then we'll conclude with testimony after that.
Okay, aloha. Angela Melody Young, testifying in support. And so we should support climate change. I'm going to read a letter. So from a letter to the chair and the council, dated October of last year. This talks about the DOD and the Office of Climate Change and how DOD supported Office of Climate Change. So the office requests the receipt and expenditure of limited purpose monies that it will receive from the Department of Defense's Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, DOD OLDCC, which authorizes the Office of Climate Change to expend $1.1 million in grant funds with a non-federal in-kind match of $130,000 from the University of Hawaii, our collaborating partner, to conduct military installation resiliency review for the Marine Corps base of Hawaii. And
thank you, Angela. If you could summarize, please.
Okay, so because there are these DOD is one of the key agencies supporting climate change, we should support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions? Thank you, Chair. Any questions for the testifiers? Hearing none, mahalo, Angela, for all your insight on this. Chair's gonna close testimony and then make my recommendation. If there's no additional discussion, the chair is going to recommend that Resolution 23-162 be amended to the posted CD1 with additional amendments as discussed to insert indigenous knowledge-informed solutions after green infrastructure in Section 1 of the 7th Whereas Clause and in Section 4B of the Be It Resolved Clause. Any discussion, objections, or reservations to the amendment? Was that the amendment as well? Yep. So reservations of Councilmember Toba. The resolution is so amended to the CD1, and then the chair then with additional amendments as discussed, and the chair then recommends that Resolution 23-162 CD1 with the additional amendments as discussed be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion, objections, noting the reservations of Council Member Tolba? Any other reservations to pass this item out for third reading? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. Thank you, everybody. Okay. And that brings us to our last item. Appreciate everybody's patience, particularly in the gallery. Agenda item number 4 for action, Resolution 23-185, urging the city administration to support the development of the Ko'olaloa Community Resilience Hub. I know we have 2 persons here for the administration. We have Director Toya from Department of Emergency Services and Director Gonser from Office of Climate Change, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'll jump to testimony if there are not any questions for the directors, or if they don't want to say anything at this time. Seems like they're good, they're still seated. And I'll just note that per our discussions, we may have potential small amendments to the wording, but for now, we'll go to in-person registered or unregistered testifiers. Yeah, if you wanna, anyone that wants to testify can come up, push the button, make sure it's on, and then just state your name and proceed.
Aloha, my name is Dottie Kelly Paddock from Ha'ula, nonprofit Hui o Ha'ula.
Mahalo for being here today. We're here to testify in support of the resolution 23-185.
Yes, I am here to testify for that resolution.
Okay.
And I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that you brought this resolution forth. Thank you very much. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Ko'olaloa Community Resilience Hub, but more importantly, Action 15, that was generated by myself in 2018 and selected to be one of the 44 actions of the City and County of Honolulu. The intention of Action 15 was to provide a network of resilience hubs around the island of Oahu, especially in small, vulnerable, at-risk communities. This is Action 15, and it was also noted in that resilience plan that Hui o Ha'ula or Ha'ula would be working on the first model resilience hub for the island. So therefore, I want to say that the Ko'olaloa Community Resilience Hub is planned to be near absolute protection using FEMA safe room standards to shelter up to 2,000 people during disasters. The Ko'olaloa Community Resilience Hub will also provide critical resources after a disaster, such as food, water, power, healthcare, and communications that will help many thousands of people during and after the disaster. We have been told that given even a Category 1 disaster, that we should plan to be on our own for 30 days or more. This is something we were told over a decade ago, and we believe this still to be true given any disaster in our region. We are far away from town and very at risk. Given our roads, one road in and out, given this nature of that road is already considered the most at-risk road in the state. It is currently under siege by saltwater erosion to the utilities, to the pipes, water pipes that are bursting almost on a monthly basis that prevent traffic on those roads. So we are planning to build the Ko'olaloa Resilience Hub as a model for other resilience hubs around the island. This essential infrastructure will also provide a new home for the Ha'ula Community Center to continue serving many people on a daily basis in the need of social, economic, health, education, medical, and housing services in Ko'olaloa. We currently operate a city facility in Ha'ula referred to previously as the old satellite city hall. This is now called the Hau'ula Community Center. We have a lease through the Department of Land Management. We have been in there almost 10 years. Hui o Hau'ula nonprofit established a partnership hub at this center where we now work with 22 nonprofits from throughout the whole island who serve people, residents in our Ko'olaloa district. These are services that we never had before in Ko'olaloa, and that is the very reason that we established our nonprofit in 2014. We have been working since 2011, since the tsunami in Japan, studying our district using resources at the University of Hawaii and Civil Defense, and working with HIEMA for all these years, looking at how we can best serve our community and protect our residents. Given the recent Lahaina disasters, we have strengthened that resolve, and we know many communities across this island are looking at the very same issues. How can we keep our residents safe? We've heard repeatedly from DEM at the city that our current shelters do not ensure safety of the residents, nor do they provide any of the critical lifelines that are needed, especially for residents in small, vulnerable communities that might be cut off from city services. We were told many years ago, we are very sorry, you need to prepare to be on your own for 30 days or more, because in a major disaster, Honolulu will be overwhelmed with the needs of all the people in Honolulu. So therefore, we have taken this very seriously and understand the risks that our communities face, and we are prepared to address them through this hub.
Mahalo for your testimony. Again, also for your patience sitting here during the meeting. Are there any questions or comments for the testifier? Vice Chair?
Just comments. First of all, Dottie, thank you so much for your leadership as well as the leadership of the community on getting this moving forward. It's direly needed, and I guess I worry that we need to do this all over the place. I feel that in general, we are all ill-prepared for a catastrophic event. I worry about where people would go, because you mentioned 2,000, and I still believe that this is going to be a wonderful role model for other areas, but I worry about the capacity of all our school systems, because that's where everybody sends people to, because many are not even hurricane-proof. And this is something that all levels of government, from the neighborhood board to the county to state to the federal governments, that we all have to kokua. And I know that as Maui is rebuilding, not only are we thinking of all of them and what has happened there, but I think everyone is now looking at their own communities and asking what would happen if, regardless of the emergency, how do we leave? I do know in Kailua we are having an event on Saturday, and I'm happy that the Office of Climate Change will be there to share with them the planning process that is underway for their office throughout Oahu. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you, and also share that we hope to replicate such a hub in Ko'olaupoko. The Omega Station by the Coast Guard, the old Omega Station is already built. It's, if you've been there, it's very thick, and so we will likely secure funds to bring it up to par. And the Ko'olau Foundation, of course, is working in tandem with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands for their lease agreement, but I'm working with them for various levels of funds to replicate all the good work that you're doing in Hau'ula.
Thank you.
Take care.
Mahalo for that, Vice Chair. And just, yeah, I wanted to echo that. Mahalo for coming down.
Okay.
All that you're doing in the community, all that you shared today, that is like just a brief snapshot of all the other work that's going on, and so appreciate it. We'll wrap this up soon so you can still stay. Was anyone else going to testify? Yeah.
I'm Miriam Chang. I'm a family physician practicing in Hau'ula for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Miriam Chang. I thank you for this opportunity to talk to all of you and for the work that you all do here for us in our city. I'd just like to thank you for your support, whatever you can manage for us, because we are out there by ourselves, and on a daily basis, I deal with all the problems that we have to deal with daily. And this is not just for, the center's not just gonna be for a disaster. It's for our everyday support. Thank you.
Mahalo. Any questions? Sensing none. Thank you. See no one else in the gallery. Madam Clerk, is there anyone online registered or unregistered wanting to testify?
We have Angela Young, Chair.
Okay. Mahalo. Angela, please proceed when you're ready. And then I'll ask Madam Clerk, is there anyone else besides Ms. Young?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, so we'll close testimony after Ms. Young's proceeds.
Thank you for your patience, Chair. I am in support on behalf of CARES and creating resilience hubs. What does it do? It covers disasters. It covers disasters and manages disproportionate diversion of resources. So it shelters people, and then it also, for example, the donation drives gathered resources to support what happened in Maui. So it gathers the resources for the people to support during disasters. Resilience hubs are intended to function as places for everyday community activities as well as a safe haven. And the Ko'olauloa district, which is located on the Oahu's North Shore, has been identified by the city and county of Honolulu as its most vulnerable region related to coastal hazards. Ko'olauloa currently lacks an appropriate space for area residents to shelter and access critical resources like water, electricity, and food during an hazard event.
Mahalo, so Angela, for your testimony. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, and then appreciate that testimony is closed. I would just ask, and I'll defer to directors who wants to just share a little bit. I'd like to hear maybe just administration's position or thoughts, not necessarily on all the specifics, but just the broader conversation. Because I know there are some edits that we talked about as well, and so minor wording that I think we could work out together. But do you have a position to share or any thoughts?
Yeah, aloha Chair and Vice Chair Kiana, council members. Hiro Toya, Director for the Department of Emergency Management, and aloha Antidati. The administration has been supporting the efforts and will continue to do so. I think the question is just how that support is going to manifest and what that's going to look like. For sure, there's a couple of different elements that's discussed right now. One is the hurricane evacuation shelter issue. So that is something that we've been looking at seriously with the state of Hawaii. And our approach has been to use existing facilities and to identify targets of opportunity where we can potentially prioritize retrofits. So overall, I will acknowledge that there is a lack of enough hardened facilities for that purpose. And it's not just in Ko'olauloa. North Shore, for instance, actually doesn't have any facilities identified. So in that region, we have Kahuku Elementary School and Waihola Elementary School identified as potential hurricane refuge areas. So these are facilities that we had engineers assess, and they've determined that they can serve as kind of the best available refuge area in the region. So we do want to continue to support these efforts, but again, the question is what that support's going to look like and whether or not this will end up being a city facility. And it's not a foregone conclusion that these are necessarily city-owned facilities. We do want to work with other nonprofit organizations that have existing facilities, opportunities for partnership, any areas where we can support in terms of funding or hardening facilities. We definitely want to explore those opportunities as well.
I do appreciate that, and just the reference to Kahukuel, because I think from my understanding it's a potential site, but it's not actually designed to withstand anything major, right?
That's the case with all of our
with
facilities.
all of them, yeah.
Yeah, so those facilities are viewable online. If you go to honolulu.gov/DEM, we do have maps published that indicate where these facilities are.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the key to what the community is getting at too, right? Especially when you're in a community that's in many areas in a flood zone, older construction, when government policy is shelter in place. And so I appreciate the administration's involvement, not just on this issue, but over the years and all your work over the years, because I do think we all, in light of Maui in particular, recognize just the need to be prepared and face what's gonna continue to come our way.
Yeah, absolutely, and we definitely recognize the value of community organization and the agility that they have to meet the immediate needs of the community.
Okay, so I do know, just from talking with Auntie Dottie and her work with the federal delegation, there's potential funding coming, there's meeting coming up. Do you know if anyone from the city is gonna be at that upcoming meeting on the 28th, I believe? 29th, there's a 12 p.m. and then a 6 p.m. option.
Okay.
Is there virtual? No. Okay, well, I'll be there. Would love for anyone could be, you know.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can to attend. Just our attention has been focused on supporting Maui at this time.
100%.
But Director Gonzer has indicated he will have staff at least one of those sessions.
Oh, okay. He might have mentioned that to me before, but I know you folks are collaboratively working, so sounds like there'll be someone from administration there. So that's great. Okay, no further questions for me.
Chair.
Vice Chair.
I just want clarification. This hub will be run, this would be a community. All funding will go through the community, the HUI, correct? So this is not going to be a city-run building or a government-run building. This will be a community-driven, community building and run by the community. Is that correct?
So I think in terms of the end product, I don't think that's necessarily for me to decide, right? I think there's conversations going on with different jurisdictions, right, or different levels. So the federal government, the state level, it's on state land, right? There's been a conversation about what kind of role the city could play. Could it be a city facility that's licensed out or leased out? Could it be some other mechanism to fund it? I don't think there's a... Yeah,
no, I understand, but who has the lease?
Yeah, so right now the land lease is with Hui Ha'ula through DLNR.
That is correct. So of course there could be other
avenues.
Entities.
100%.
Both governmental, but I think it's critical and it needs to be strategic because you don't want to scare people away. All you got to say is, oh, because of this, you're going to take it over, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all. I think it needs to be part of the process. So for now, I'm saying the HUI it's going to be a community-driven project because the lease is with DLNR, and they can have both governmental and NGO and private entities there who would like to help in the space that is offered to provide community services, both for the disaster as well as for everyday needs in the community, all right? Okay, that's all. I just want to make sure. I don't want the city to be scared away here.
Oh, no, I 100% appreciate that insight.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because it could even be if funding secures a building, services, or other, funding sources. Okay, seeing no other questions, I'm going to recommend that Resolution 23-185 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, no further business. Mahalo to my colleagues, but particularly our staff for being here this late, our clerks, OCS, Olelo, everybody. So a meeting is adjourned.